In the early 1970s, one car quietly sat between a Ferrari and a Corvette, but almost nobody noticed. It came from an Italian brand most people forgot. It had a body by Bertone, a chassis by Bizzarrini, and a big American V8 under the hood. The name sounded fancy, Iso Lele. But behind that name was a strange story of racing dreams, financial trouble, and a man naming a car after his wife. This is the story of the 1972 Iso Lele Sport. The car came from a small company called Iso Rivolta, based in Bresso, Italy. They had already made scooters and refrigerators before moving into cars. In the late 1960s, the owner, Piero Rivolta, wanted to build a grand touring car that was less flashy than the Iso Grifo, but still sporty enough for a wealthy buyer. He named the car after his wife, Rachele Rivolta, who was nicknamed Lele. The Iso Lele made its first public appearance at the 1969 New York Auto Show. The styling was done by Marcello Gandini at Bertone, the same designer who worked on the Lamborghini Miura. The Lele was built on a chassis originally designed by Giotto Bizzarrini, the man behind the Ferrari 250 GTO. The result was a two-door 2+2 coupe with a fastback design, pop-up headlights, and vents to cool the brakes. From 1969 to 1972, the car came with Chevrolet V8 engines. Early models used the 5.3-litre 327 engine, making 300 horsepower, and later versions got a 5.7-litre 350 engine with up to 350 horsepower. These engines were paired with a Monte 4-speed manual or a General Motors automatic. Around 111 of the 300 horsepower version were built, and only 13 with the more powerful 350 engine. In 1972, they switched to using Ford engines because General Motors stopped supplying parts. The new engine was the 5.8-litre Ford 351 Cleveland V8, which made 325 horsepower. There were two main versions with this Ford setup, the standard IR6 and the more powerful IR6 Sport. The Sport model had 360 horsepower and only came with a 5-speed manual made by ZF. Only about 24 of these were ever made. There was also a very rare version called the Lele Marlboro, built to support Iso's brief Formula One partnership with the Marlboro racing team in 1973. It had special lightweight body panels, a black rear spoiler, and just a few were made. Some say only 2, others say maybe 5. The car had a de Dion rear axle, coil springs in front, and inboard rear disc brakes. Inside, the Lele had leather seats, wood trim, air conditioning, and a dashboard full of gauges. It was built for long-distance comfort, but it could also reach speeds close to 150 miles per hour. Even with its design and power, the Lele never sold well. Only 285 were made from 1969 to 1974. In December 1974, Iso went bankrupt and shut down production. Today, the Iso Lele is mostly forgotten, but it remains a strange mix of Italian design, American muscle, and a love letter to one man's wife. Back in the early 1970s, when most supercars were coming out of Italy or Germany, a small Swiss company decided to challenge them all. It was not a big name, not a big factory, and not even a big country for car building. But that did not stop Peter Monteverdi from trying to make one of the fastest and most powerful road cars in Europe. What he built was called the 1971 Monteverdi Hai 450 SS, and it looked like something out of a dream. But it came with a real Hemi engine and some serious speed. Peter Monteverdi founded his company, Automobiles Monteverdi Limited, in Basel, Switzerland in 1967. Before that, he had worked as a car dealer and even built Formula One cars for a short time, but his big goal was to make a street car that could go head-to-head with a Ferrari 365 GTB4 Daytona or a Lamborghini Miura. He chose a strange name for his car. In German, Hai means shark, and 450 SS stood for 450 horsepower and super sports. The car was first shown at the 1970 Geneva Motor Show, painted in a color called purple smoke. It had a very low body and a pointed front, and it was built by Carrozzeria Fisore in Italy. The design is often credited to Trevor Fiore, but some sources say Pietro Frua helped too. The chassis came from a Swiss company called Stahlbau AG and was made with steel tubing. Under the rear engine cover sat a massive 7.0-litre Chrysler 426 Hemi V8 engine with twin 4-barrel carburetors. The engine made around 450 horsepower and about 490 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 revolutions per minute. The transmission was a ZF 5-speed manual transaxle, the same kind used in cars like the Maserati Bora. With that setup, the Monteverdi Hai 450 SS could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds and had a claimed top speed of over 180 miles per hour. The car had a tubular frame, independent front suspension with double wishbones, and a special rear de Dion axle with a Watts linkage. It used ATE-vented disc brakes on all 4 wheels. The total weight was about 2,750 pounds, depending on the source. Monteverdi originally planned to make 49 of these cars, but only 2 prototypes were ever completed. The first one was chassis number TNT101, the original purple smoke car. It was sold in late 1971 to a man named Karl-Heinz Schubert. Later, it was shipped to the United States and restored in the early 2000s. It was sold at auction in Paris in 2010 for nearly €400,000. The second car, chassis TNT102, was the longer wheelbase version shown in 1973. It now sits in the Monteverdi Museum in Basel. In the 1990s, Monteverdi made 2 more replicas from leftover parts. These are sometimes mistaken for originals, but they were built much later. One of them is now in the Swiss Transport Museum in Lucerne. The Monteverdi Hai 450 SS is one of the rarest supercars from the 1970s. It came from a place not known for cars, used an American engine, had Italian styling, and almost no one has ever seen one on the road. But for a short moment, Switzerland had its own shark in the water. In the middle of the 1980s, a small British company was trying to do something big. While most car companies were thinking about fuel economy and front-wheel drive, Marcos Engineering decided to go in a different direction. Their idea was simple: take a lightweight fiberglass body, bolt it onto a strong steel chassis, and drop in a Rover V8 engine. What came out of this wild recipe was the 1984 Marcos Manula, a car that looked like it wanted to fight a Lotus and outrun a TVR, all while sounding like a V8-powered thunderstorm on wheels. Marcos Engineering was first started in 1959 by Jem Marsh and Frank Costin in Luton, England. The name Marcos came from a mix of their names, Marsh and Costin. For a while, the company built race cars and kit cars, but by the late 1970s, things had gone quiet. Then, in 1981, Jem Marsh brought the company back. He started selling updated versions of the older GT models as kits. By 1984, he went a step further and launched a new model, the Marcos Manula. The Manula used the same basic shape as earlier GT cars, but with smoother lines. The body was made from fiberglass, and it sat on a steel chassis. The car only weighed around 1,984 pounds, which made it very quick with the right engine. The standard engine was a 3.5-litre Rover V8 with about 190 horsepower and 220 pound-feet of torque. Some later versions had a 3.9-litre Rover V8 with fuel injection, making up to 200 horsepower depending on the setup. The Manula had a 5-speed manual gearbox, and early models used simple suspension designs. But in 1986, Marcos gave the car independent rear suspension, using parts from the Ford Granada. This helped the handling without making it too soft. That same year, they also added a Spider version, which was a convertible. Now buyers could choose between a coupe or drop top without losing performance. Inside, the Manula was built for 2 people. The seats were fixed, but the pedals could be moved with a knob. This made it easier for tall drivers, even ones over 6 feet 7 inches tall. There was a tall center console and even air conditioning as an option. The parts used inside and under the body were mostly from British Leyland or Rover, which helped keep repairs simple. The performance was solid for the time. The 3.5-litre version could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 6 seconds, and some road tests reported a top speed between 135 and 140 miles per hour. Some reviews in 1984, like one from Motorsport magazine, said the car was fast, fun to drive, and easy to spot in a crowd. From 1983 to 1992, about 170 Manula coupes and 119 Spiders were built. After 1992, the company switched to the Marcos Mantara and stopped selling kits. But the Manula kept its place as one of the more unusual British sports cars of the 1980s, a car with a big V8, a tiny body, and a name that still sounds like something out of a comic book. In 1974, something unusual was being built in Australia. It had a sloped roof, a big rear hatch, and a name that sounded more like a military tank than a sports car. This was not from Holden, Ford, or Chrysler. It came from Leland, Australia, the same company known for the big and strange P76 sedan. The car was called the Leland Force 7V, and it had big dreams. But those dreams got crushed. Literally. Leland Australia wanted to make a car that could compete with the Holden Monaro, Ford Falcon GT, and Chrysler Charger. They wanted something sporty, something new. So they turned to Giovanni Michelotti, an Italian designer, to shape it. The Force 7V was based on the Leland P76, but it was a 2-door coupe with a fastback design. It had no body panels shared with the sedan. The hatchback was a first for an Australian car. The seats could fold flat. You could carry your luggage, your dog, or maybe a broken washing machine. It was weird but smart. Under the hood was a 4.4-litre aluminum V8. It was based on the old Rover Buick V8, but made in Australia. It produced about 192 horsepower and 386 pound-feet of torque. You could get a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic. The top speed was around 118 miles per hour. The Force 7V could run a quarter mile in about 16.5 seconds. Not bad for a car that looked like it could deliver bread and beat a Charger at the same time. Leland built about 56 units of the Force 7, including some 6-cylinder versions and a few planned high-performance models called Tour de Force. They also wanted to build a racing version with Repco, but it never happened. Then came the collapse. In late 1974, Leland Australia shut down its plant. Most of the Force 7 were crushed. About 46 cars were destroyed. Only 10 Force 7V units survived. Out of those 10, 8 were sold at a public auction on September 9, 1975 by Gray's Auctions. Each car sold for around 10,000 Australian dollars. That was far less than Leland had hoped. One car went to the United Kingdom for testing. Another ended up in the National Motor Museum in South Australia. Others were bought by private collectors like Dave Nelson in Victoria, and one was even sent to Greece. The surviving cars came in strange colours. There was home on the orange, bold as brass, Nevada, green, and even Omega Navy. One Force 7V was white and is now displayed in a museum in Perth. Another was brown and believed to be kept by Leland's headquarters in England. Even though the Force 7V never got mass-produced, it remains one of the most unusual cars in Australian history. It was part sports car, part station wagon, and part business casualty. Today, with just 10 known examples, it is one of the rarest V8 hatchbacks ever made.